Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and I will be joined by a brilliant, big-brained smart head this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are listening, whether you're driving or sitting at home or mowing your lawn or walking or, I don't know, pretending to listen to somebody important to you. You can. We are glad you are here, and we are glad you're here because you are the great listeners that have made us a global top 10% podcast. As usual, you can reach us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. Remember, share the love, share the buff, give us a 5-star review, subscribe, like, give a smiley star, whatever that is. Tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. And remember, you can hit the Buy Me a Coffee button there, and hey, buy me a coffee, and that would be a great thing. Our big brain smart head today is one Ricardo Buratti, or something like that. He will tell me exactly how to say it. A dear friend that I met this summer in Europe, an architect living in Ghent, Belgium, and an all-around wonderful young man. Ricardo, how are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you for inviting me to your amazing podcast.
But that's right.
That's way too much of a description.
Well, that's so. So I met Ricardo initially in the summer. Remember, I went to Bar and then I went to Bruges, and Ricardo showed up in Bar as part of the. Were you officially part of the faculty group there, or were you just dropping by, dropping pearls of wisdom as you went through?
Do you want the honest answer or the diplomatic one?
No, give us the dramatic one.
Well, I was going home to Italy, and Bar is on the way, and that's exactly in the middle, and that's the best pit stop I could ever do. Yeah. We met in the drawing room.
Yes, we did.
And Nadia said, "Oh, Ricardo has come," and probably you were already being briefed by Nicholas.
Yes.
That's another fellow of you from the United States.
But you knew Nicholas from the year before.
Yes. He was a student of the previous edition of the summer school in Bruges. But you said, that's Ricardo.
Yes, we had heard your, how do you say it? Your reputation preceded you, I think is the
way
we tend to put that. So you were there doing a little pit stop, and then you made your way to Italy and then met us again in Bruges, and as formally part of the faculty, and helped us with our drawings and our interpretations and all sorts of other things. And you in particular were instrumental in me completing my work in Bruges there. So for that, I am grateful. So, but let me rewind this just a little bit and go back to your background in your schooling and how you got to being where you are, just so we can, so we know you're not just a guy that showed up.
Well, I'm technically I'm an Italian immigrant in Belgium. Italians are the second or third community in Belgium. And I moved here to finish my studies long ago. I was still studying architecture. It was sustainable architecture back then, so I was already in the mindset of not approaching architecture conventionally according to industry standards. But I wasn't yet into the traditional bubble. I was, as every student, educated in a modernist way of designing and thinking about the city and structure of human relations, materials, all these kind of things were into the modernist framework. And I had such a hard time in Belgium that I really struggled finishing my degree. But uh, as a personality, I'm quite stubborn and defiant. So I just kept going, and I
Yep.
came out of that, and I started working here because in the meantime in Italy the economy was not going good thanks to the amazing European policies, and I just made a decision of staying here because I was hearing stories from my ex classmates in Italy that were strongly advising me to stay where I was. And so I worked my career here a little bit for an amount of years, but then I started feeling this strange sensation. I was not satisfied. I I found the daily work alienating and depressing. Staying at the computer, um, managing numbers. It was a very cold and technic way of working. So I kind of felt into a sort of depression, but I realized it after a while. And one day I said, I'm going to make a project that I like. And I started sketching, drawing by hand. I wasn't doing that for many years. I remember during the university, teachers were kind of set off by hand drawings because they were not standard drawings, you know. So they had to make an effort to understand the way that person drew that and why, you know. So I felt really good in that moment, and I said, "Yeah, I really have to go back to this because I've always been a good drawer since I was a kid, and I realized um, suddenly that the whole school system in all those years was just trying to push my creativity down because creative people are unforecastable people,
Yeah,
and that's
it is.
why and
You
that's
are
why
unforecastable. That's a good word.
what would be the right word then?
No, that's a great word. That's a great word. So you've been drawing since you were a little kid, then, right? And did you
Yes,
take? So are you were? So your degree is in architecture, right?
my degree
Eh,
is in architecture, but um, I also had kind of existential dilemma when I was teenager. I finished the high school and I had no idea on what I was going to do with my life. And that's because maybe I was a bit unlucky because I didn't have one talent, one interest. I had a lot of, let's say, half talents, a lot of interests. I was good, a bit of on everything. I could have become a musician. I could have become a scientist. Could have become an architect, an engineer, an artist, something like that, a lawyer, a cook. That's what people tell me. Eh? But I wanted to put all of this together. And I thought architecture is the thing that covers the most. And that was at the beginning what was not an easy choice because you naturally suck at something. So let's say that I wasn't the best calculating mind. I had to really work my muscles on that. So architecture is about learning what you cannot do really good, because without that, you cannot be a good architect. A good architect starts to come up when you have a resemblance of all-around skills. And then you can really start approaching things in a general way, in a particular way, inductive way, deductive way, and designing from the inside, designing from the outside, and kind of things like this.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think I see that in the other things I do, like in my woodshop, when I make things, I do find out that I tend to avoid doing things in my woodshop that I don't do well. And instead of what I should do is find those things. I guess they say the terminology now is lean in. I should lean into the things that I don't do well to get better at them, so that I can have a fuller skill set. So what was the piece there that you felt you had to lean into the most to get to where you are? Was that the calculating kind of, and or just was just everything?
A bit of a lot. A bit of everything, because it's also a social environment. So you have to be digestible to the other people. The other people don't need to have problems with you, even if you are in disagreement with them. So you have to convince them. You have to explain your point. You have to be gentle but relentless in explaining that your solution is the best. Things should be done in this direction. Not I don't even mean in this way, but in this direction rather than the other direction. So I'm a naturally grumpy person, and that was quite a challenge. Other things were much easier to me. Learning about architecture history, tracing parallels between architecture and politics, styles and government regimes, revolutions, and urbanism. This kind of things. They were very easy for me. Philosophy, or you call it philosophy, right?
Yep.
Philosophy and theoretical framework. That was my strength. I always liked traditional architecture, though, and that was my weakness, because in the current architecture faculty structure, traditional architecture is not taken into consideration. It's just an introduction to modern architecture, which is the only possible imaginable architecture, and appreciating style from the past in a non-conservative way is viewed as a heresy, because you are supposed to be falsifying something, which is an argument that doesn't make any sense.
So where did that come from? I mean, because I said this to a number of people, and I think I said it to Noe on the show that we did, that the thing that surprised me most when I got to Bar, and then it was reinforced in Bruges, was how dissatisfied the students were with the education they were receiving. That it wasn't giving them what they seemed to want. It didn't have the things that drew them to the field, was not being presented in the schooling. And a lot of that had to do with the modernist philosophy, and the idea that one must reject. In order to do this, you have to reject what you've seen that has been successful, just like you said, it seems like a nonsensical thing to me. If we tried to do that in mathematics, we would make no progress, right? And so I guess what is your thought on where that comes from? What's the impetus of that, or is it just like minds thinking alike for some reason, and then they get a foothold?
That's a typically modernist idea. That's an idea that finds its roots just in the 20th century. Before that, it was perfectly normal to look at the past and find technical solutions, inspirations, typologies, even the looks. And for some reason, we keep doing that. For instance, in music, in fashion, without flinching an eye. But if I, architect, do that, I have to undergo a series of criticism and debates, and I have to defend myself for what I do. This refusal for traditional architecture stems from the fact that, according to academia, architecture has to express the values and the material of the current time, the zeitgeist. But this has never been true, except for the 20th century, when all the industrial processes and materials changed very rapidly, and new aesthetic was born. But this is a very reductive view, because if we look closely, we can see a lot of transition periods in history in which old technology merged with new, and new aesthetics were born, just picking up what was there before and merging it with the new technology, with the new material, and making something grand. Think about the Crystal Palace in Britain. That was a very, I would say, almost a classical aesthetics, but the project was something completely new, completely extraordinary, in glass and molten iron, very thin frames for the international exhibition. So an exhibition of technology. And we can see how the perfect merge of the pre-industrial world with the newborn industrial world gave rise to an aesthetic that wasn't there before, and which still nowadays impresses the fantasy of contemporary people. Think about Star Wars, the first Star Wars. How is it called? That one in Naboo. Now I don't remember. But
The episode 4, New Hope.
yes, I think that one. The aesthetics of Naboo and the royal palace and the castle and the spaceport. Uh, that's actually what I mean. It's a kind of a vernacular architecture from a planet far away, uh, of an unknown race with their culture and who knows what. But you can see the grandeur of their ancient civilization, together with the prowess of their technology.
Yeah, so that's got to be one of the second trilogy ones where they have the palace on Naboo. Yes, yes.
Yeah, So, I mean, that kind of aesthetics nowadays uh, excites the fans, excites people because they see something they are attracted to, and if we would just recover the traditional ways of designing buildings, of putting them together, of creating a place, uh, that's what people ask for. But because they cannot see it in reality, then they search for this kind of things into video games, into cinema, in the fantastic world.
So you have a practice, or you work for a firm? What's your setup? You have a job as an architect. What does that look like? Because I see every now and then I see things you post, and you're like, I see drawings that you make. I see pieces of things that you've helped bring into fruition. I see you scrambling around finding old railings and things that somebody wanted to jettison that you thought you should keep. So what's the focus of Ricardo's practice? What is the
Oh,
or is it as broad as it appears on the outside?
well, I'm a freelance. As a freelance, I can do a little bit what I want. Um, I just have to not upset my colleagues and my clients, and I can do what I want basically. The issue of that is that I don't have a fixed salary, so I have to constantly serve into any project that comes in. That's pretty a tough life. Um, so the 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 tragedy of a traditional architect like me, who doesn't really have a studio, is splitting in two. On one hand, I have to collaborate with other architects and other offices doing what I call the humble job. Very, very regular utilitarian projects in which I have to solve the leak, regularize the illicit expansion, um, I don't know, open a new window. It's a lot of paperwork, and well, that's a very sad job. That's what I really don't like. But in a way, I managed to made myself liking it because that's how money comes in. So
Right, right.
you have to be very efficient, very square, very fast, very professional in order to get rid of those type of projects very fast and get as much money in as you can in order to buy the time for being an architect with capital A. What I mean with that, I mean waking up in the morning, going to my drawing table, turning on the light, and start drawing a pediment or or paint an aquarelle or study an old book from the 1500s from Antonio Canova or something like that. In a way, just pursue what I like about architecture. Um, that's why I found the round table of architecture. They really saved my life. I was saying before that I was kind of depressed, and well, thanks to them, I found a new impulse because otherwise I would have probably stopped being architect. And now I know that it's possible to become a traditional architect. And I, well, I wouldn't call myself a traditional architect because I'm modest, but I would say I'm an architect who tries to do traditional architecture in the limits of what is possible to do.
So you're going to be working with La Table Round, the round table of architecture folks in Bruges next summer, right? And for you will be there for the summer school. You're on the list of faculty for the Bruges class in August. And so that's got to be a big plus to do that again.
Well, I started as a student.
Oh, really? Okay.
I started as a student, and I really couldn't take it anymore. And just because I was freelance, I told my colleagues, listen, I'm going to disappear for one whole month, and they fainted. But that's how it works. So I participated the first edition um, of the summer school, and for me it was a success because Nadia, Noe, everyone was really happy of me, and I was really happy of them, and we naturally we naturally became friends, and we started collaborating immediately. I would say it was almost destiny because I was alone and isolated, studying traditional architecture on my own, being passionate about Flemish architecture, and learning the secrets of masonry bonds, completely alone when I met them, and it was like a chemical reaction. So they just asked me to join their team, and that's what I did. And for 3 years, then I kept helping them. But I guess next year will be different because there's a new factor changing
There will be a new factor. Yes, I hear there will be. You may have to see if you have certain skill sets that we're not sure you have. So, or do you? I don't know. I have those skill sets. I could be of assistance there in that regard.
changing diapers.
Yeah, I could do that next year if they really need that. So, all right. So you're an architect in Ghent, trying to do traditional kinds of things. You will be in Bruges next summer, in August at least, from the 1st to the 15th, helping out with the Bruges Summer School. But my big association with you was the what's the word? I wish there were a word that were more expressive of invaluable than invaluable. The assistance you gave me was it cannot be measured, to help me get the projects done that we need to get done. And so I would tell people that it would take me, an hour and a half to draw a window, and you'd be like, oh, we would just do it like this, and you would go in about like 6 minutes, you'd have a new window, and I'd be like, I can't do it that fast. And you provided just an absolutely a priceless resource to me and to other students there to get my work done. In particular, helping out drawing the gardens and the floor plans for the city block that we designed for Bruges. It was a phenomenal. It was wonderful to be a part of, and I'm eternally grateful for the gracious assistance you gave me.
But I had to do that. Let me go back. Let me go back to the drawing room in bar where we met. So
Okay.
I walked in. I saw a facade drawn on a piece of paper, and then around the drawing of the facade, a lot of calculus. I said, who is doing trigonometry around a facade?
Yeah, that would be me. That would be me.
Yeah, that's it. So I went around and I said, who's this guy? And Nadia said, that's him, that's Rafi. And I said, okay, that's the mathematician. Because I have to understand how your brain works. Because for me, you were amazing. You were this kind of alien
I wasn't an alien, was it?
landed between kids, teenagers, and even people like me who have a little bit more than half your age. So that was already very, very, how can I say, respectful. You already deserved a lot of respect because you had the courage of putting yourself into a potentially discomfortable situation.
Yeah, well, I mentioned at one of the episodes, I had mentioned before that I was um, the sitting in the airport in Philadelphia, getting ready to come over for 8 weeks in Europe, studying drawing and architecture was it was it was less it was more frightening than defending multi-million-dollar clinical trials in front of the FDA. It was it was substantially more difficult for precisely that reason. I was not, like I said, I'm not trained for doing that. And it is interesting, like you saw the mathematics and the calculus and those kinds of things that I did. I talked to my daughter who is an artist, and we talk a lot about the idea that you express yourself through art. And I have a slightly different turn of a phrase on that. I don't think that you express yourself through art. I think who you are is revealed by the art that you do. So I look at the way I draw and the way I think about these processes, and it seems to fit very. I mean, if you had to, I measure and I line things up, and I look at which ways I can use the mathematics I know as a shortcut for me trying to do things freehand or without without a net. I use mathematics as a net when I'm walking on the tightrope. And it's very rare I want to walk on the tightrope by myself because I know I'm not very good on the tightrope. So I use mathematics as that kind of net. And what happens is what I do when I draw and what I do when I build Lego, for example, those are very similar kinds of things with regard to how I look at the process. I spend a lot of time thinking about how I can shortcut the system by making sure it's going to work the first time. When I do the Lego, I use a lot of Pythagorean theorem in there, a lot of those kinds of things to get the pieces to all line up. I don't try things. I just make sure that they're going to work. And before I put graphite on the paper, I want to make sure it's going to be in the right place because I really don't want to erase. I'm not a good eraser. And so that was part of my process for that, was to try to come up with a way to do it because I don't have the skills. I can't walk. I cannot dance on the tightrope. I very rarely dance. And that's where that comes from.
But that was really fascinating. I realized this immediately. I wanted to see how this mathematic brain was handling this new set of information that doesn't directly belong to your domain, and how you were systematizing them into a project. Because as an architect, you become a little bit of a psychologist. You start seeing how people think, because of course a design is a thinking process. Why are you asking me to design a traditional house, and then you want me to insert a 5 meter sliding window because your wife wants it? Why you absolutely want a ground floor made like this, and um, first floor which is completely different, so that we will have to spend a huge amount of money into steel beams and reinforcement of all kinds, increasing the risk of technical problems like cracks and other complexity vulnerabilities. So the way people design and what they propose also reflect who they are and how they think and even how they feel in that moment. And I absolutely wanted to follow you because you were a very intriguing specimen.
Well, when we got to the part we were drawing, what in Bruges there are a lot of what do you call them? Stepped gables. Those, it goes
Yes.
up a certain number and over a certain amount. And I know there was in the drawing room in Bruges, there was a lot of discussion of how do we do the stepped gables, and it took me a while to figure that out, but I figured that one out. I mean, you start at the middle, figure out how many steps you need, take that number of steps and space that off to the edge, and then do the same thing vertically. And then just, if you draw the grid there, then you just step up the edge of the gable and you're done. I mean, you can do it so that there is no thinking required. It's a very simple task, but it was interesting to me, who spends a lot of time thinking in that way, that once I figured it out, I was able to show people how to make that go. And, it was a skill set that I happened to have that was valuable there. And there was another one. We were doing some of these constructions that Patrick would say, here's how you divide something by 12 or divide something by 2, or you do this circle over here, and how to do all those geometric constructions. And one of the guys in the class said, it seems to me that this little piece that's left over is exactly half of that piece. Is that always going to work out? And I was, I said when I started the class, I bring the skill set I bring is like, I'll be willing to be the guy to go get the pizza, right? I mean, that's, send me to go get the pizza. I'll get it. You guys keep drawing. I'll do it, right? So, but this was one of the things I could help out. And I was able to prove, I did a geometric proof of why that little section that he thought was exactly half of that other section. Yes, it was always true. It would always be true by the nature of its construction. It's tautological. It can't not be. And that was a nice thing to be able to demonstrate that with Pythagorean theorem and law of cosines or whatever it was, and to write all those things out. And I found that really comforting. It was my favorite part. My easiest part was the constructions.
But that's the magic. You see, you came from a completely different domain. You found a point of contact in architecture, which is a huge field. So you managed to find the gate where for you was easier to get in, instead of climbing the walls or trying to smash them. You just pulled your key out of your pocket and you opened the door of geometry, because geometry is visual math.
Yes, it is.
It's visual math, and that's how I went to math. Because for me, it was really difficult to conceive math basing on numbers, because numbers were meaningless. But as soon as I found a way to understand the representations, understand the form of a conic by its structure, you start figuring out the links between math, architecture, geometry, science, music, and that opens many doors. And then that's why I'm really glad of having studied architecture and being architects. But the most interesting thing were you to me, because I saw you doing something you were not used to. So I just tried to help you when you had some beginning of a breakdown, and I gave you the right information that was missing you, of course, because of your different domain. But you did an amazing work, and you did it because you're a good guy. You're an intelligent man, and you were a good student, and you did an amazing project. So,
well, it was like I said, it was a wonderfully joyous summer, and that was the only downside was that it had to end, right, and had to come back to real life. But it lives every day in me. The things I learned and the things I saw and the people, but mostly the people I met. It was life changing is a little hard. I think it was life focusing for me, was really nice, and I'm glad I don't have to do that professionally, because I'd be too slow. right? But it is but it was wonderful. And I see things, we were at Mass this morning, and my wife had mentioned to me the other day, she was like, what do you think about the altar and how it's laid out? It's kind of a modernist church built, I don't know, 50 years ago. And it's, it's out in the suburbs, and it has wonderfully pious people, and they deserve surroundings that are up to their level of devotion, that meets their level of devotion. And I it was really the first time after she asked that question, I looked at it today and I said, I think we can do some things here that we could just simply change some. And it's the first time I had ever really thought about that. I'd always thought it looked a little subpar, but I'd never really thought, well, what would I do? And now I'm thinking about what might I do? So that has been game changing to me. And I'm seeing things now that I didn't used to see, which is really remarkable. And it's not all negative, right? I mean, it's easy to say, oh, look how they screwed that up. Look how they screwed that up. I mean, it's easy to say that, but I'm seeing things now that people are doing well. And that is very, that's one of the good things that we seek. And that's, and my summer schools gave that to me.
But that's why it's life changing. It's not an episode that changes your life. It's an episode that triggers in you a new way of seeing things. So now you have a special eye for things you didn't see before. You learned that between public and private space there are certain gradients, and those
Yes.
gradients can define your project. Do you remember? You had this block that was a triangle facing the canal on one side.
Mm-hmm.
And you decided to make kind of donut, a hollow block following the typical Flemish structure,
Yep.
with the gardens inside. But we had just public and private space. And then you said, I'm going to put a park in the center. And I told you, yes, but we have also to insert some gradients. For instance, a private garden of each house, and
Mm-hmm.
then a space that it's collective, meaning it's public, but just within a shared community. And then you have to figure out how this space is linked to the public space, how the people cross it, what happens in the night, what happens in the day, how do people circulate, how do they preserve their privacy, where they interact to each other, and what if they don't want to interact to each other. And at the beginning you were a bit overwhelmed, but
Yes. Yep.
you managed to digest complexity, and you synthesize them in a project, and I just helped you drawing the trees and the benches and the paths and the flowers on the lawn of the park.
Yeah, it was I remember it a very stressful time, but I do remember it very fondly. And that is, I said I've been in situations, I've worked on really great teams. I've worked on sports teams, and I've worked on business teams and scientific teams. And this was certainly in bar, because it was just one team. It was just a phenomenal experience. And then Bruce was great too. It was just 5 of us, but we all kind of had our own little piece that wasn't really tied together. But it was those experiences of work where people bring their different facets, their different expertise to the problem. And it's very interesting to watch how in a good team, people will put their selfish objectives aside for the good of the whole. And that's what we always used to teach my kids when they were playing basketball or they were playing whatever they were doing, is when the ball goes through the hoop, everybody gets the point. I mean, it's not like we never kept track of who scored the most points or this kind of thing. Does the team win? All right. The people win when the team wins. And in this case, the team would win when the collective plan that everybody put together is the thing that we want it to be. So it was a great team. And you were a great assistant coach, I guess is the way to put it. So it was wonderful. It was a wonderful team experience. And like I said, I had a ball. It was life focusing, as they say. Ricardo, we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask if is there a final little bit, a little nugget, your final statement before you go? You could share a little bit of big brain smart head wisdom with our little listeners, how to seek the good.
What can I say? First of all, I'm not a big brain nor a smart head. I'm a person who has a working ethic, a personal ethic, understands that there are some bigger values to follow, but also freedom for personal expression, for seeking your own goals. So I would say that that's not the easiest path. The easiest path is the path that is already prepared for you, but it won't bring you anywhere. So I would advise people who have doubts about what they want to do in their life, about how they want to evolve their life, in which direction to steer it. That's never too late. There are many points of contact between domains, between jobs, between knowledge, and you can always use them to pursue your goals and to jump from tree to tree like a monkey. And don't be afraid of that. There will be people like you who you can befriend and who can help you in this travel. For what concerns traditional architecture, I'm very happy about myself. I consider myself still in the changing evolution process, and who knows where life will bring me. I don't close any door, and I'm ready to sail off to unknown lands.
I'm sure your ship is in good hands. So that's
Is a wreck.
It's a raft. All right. Well, Ricardo, thank you very much for being our guest today, and as again for the tremendous help you gave me this summer.
Thank you again.
The rest of you out there, you know the stick. Seek the good, live virtuously, and flourish, and enjoy the adventure of life.
It's going to be a great day.